Eddard sat cross-legged below the weirwood in the Winterfell godswood. His status as the Lord of Winterfell was still in question as rumours swirled that his uncle, Lord Bran, had been discovered alive in the free city of Braavos. Still, rumours seemed to travel faster than ravens these days. Eddard patiently waited for word from his father, currently seated at Eastwatch. Not only as the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, but Sir Jon still retained the title of Warden of the North, selected by King Gendry himself. It was with great relief that Eddard had hoped Lord Bran had survived. Now he just awaited confirmation. One of the many direwolves in the godswood held its head high, sniffing the wind. Footsteps through the fallen weirwood leaves gave away the one who approached him. It was his blood rider Omara. She walked softly, attempting not to disturb him. She sat opposite of him, her back rest against the same weirwood trunk. After a few moments of silence, Omara was the first to speak.
"What troubles you, my lord? Where do your thoughts dwell?"
His blood rider asked. Eddard refused eye contact as he pondered a response. He sighed heavily before retorting,
"The most gut-wrenching of all human emotions,"
Eddard stated, although it seemed to be a question.
"Despair?"
Omara asked, almost embarrassed for Eddard as she chose that particular emotion.
"Far from it. I was simply referring to optimism."
Eddard answered, and Omara seemed confused. His eyes quickly shifted as one of the wolves chased down a grouping of crows foraging in the deep grass. He smiled briefly before she replied.
"Since when has optimism troubled you so, my lord?"
"Ever since the burden of authority was thrust upon these shoulders. Rumour has spread my uncle Bran is alive, and soon could be resuming his duties as Lord of Winterfell."
Eddard answered before muttering under his breath,
"Thank the gods."
Omara seemed sympathetic to the fact that Eddard never desired the authority the North seemed so desperate to anoint him with. Her eyes shifted to follow Ned's as he followed the old Maester approaching them from afar. Still the direwolves circled him as he shuffled through the fallen leaves. Omara looked from Maester Ashmore's sullen face and immediately peered at Eddard. Her large dark eyes communicated her concern. The wolves heeled on the far side of the pond. Eddard could see 3 of them. As Maester Ashmore approached, a direwolf let out a mournful howl. Eddard and Omara stayed seated as they were addressed by the Maester of Winterfell.
"My lord, word from the wall."
The old Maester reported, and Eddard's shoulders slumped to match the Maester's face.
"I see. And what does my father have to say?"
"The Lord Commander sends his regards, my lord, but it is my unfortunate duty to inform you the North is under threat."
Eddard had hoped his father's message would be more personal in nature, but this was not your typical family correspondence. It was a warden communicating with a liege lord.
"And what would my father advise?"
"Advise, my lord?"
"As warden, my father is responsible to the king for its conduct in regard to the crown. However, the houses of the North are sworn to me as the Lord of Winterfell."
"It is true, my lord."
The Maester responded, seemingly surprised that Eddard was asserting himself.
"So as I previously asked, good Maester, what has the Lord Commander advised?"
In the strongest possible tone, the Lord Commander advises his liege lord to rally the North, the entire North, in order to counter an imminent invasion from the east.
Eddard sighed deeply. The rustling behind the brush caught his attention as now all 6 direwolves peered over the brush at Eddard. The young lord now felt more of a child than the Lord of Winterfell. His voice broke slightly as he responded.
"Meet me in the library. I'll be with you shortly."
Eddard asked. The Maester quickly complied and excused himself. Omara stood at his side but refused to address the ominous warning from Eastwatch. Eddard slowly approached the pack of wolves. One in particular had buried its head under Ned's arm. It was the father, no, the warrior. Eddard always had issues telling them apart. He scratched the scalp of the direwolf as it panted incessantly.
"You seem nervous?"
"I sincerely thought there could be a Lord of Winterfell who didn't march the North off to war."
"It's not the man who decides on war, but the circumstances he finds himself in."
Omara rebutted as they paced through the godswood. Their conversation continued through the Winterfell passageways. Eddard noted the abundance of horses outside the stables. Winterfell appeared to have visitors. Eddard could hear voices when he entered the library where a handful of men had gathered around the war table. Eddard had never seen it set up before. He hoped he had never needed to.
Lord Stark,
Boomed a confident voice. Eddard felt relieved as Cassius Serwyn turned to face him as he entered the library. He embraced Eddard as a brother, as the pair of lords smiled widely. Lord Cassius spent many a summer here at Winterfell, learning from more experienced lords. He was a distant cousin, far from any sort of inheritance. The results of the Red Wedding saw fit to thrust him into a leadership position. This was likely reason for Eddard's relief. Cassius was also thrust into head of house before he was ever expecting to, if at all.
Welcome, Lord Serwyn. While I assume your travels were short, I have to ask, why you are here?
the whole north is abuzz, Lord Stark. We thought you might appreciate a council to advise you.
Cassius explained, and Ned exhaled in relief. It was exactly what he felt he needed. While Maester Ashmore always gave keen counsel, he wouldn't be the one ordering men away from their families. Cassius then invited Eddard to the map.
The Watch is already in a cascading caravan. All castles on the western wall are now riding well past Castle Black. The Watch be in need of sufficient cavalry on the eastern shore, fortificating of defences at the last hearth, and lastly a reserve force to assist the front line.
You act as if we're already marching,
Eddard retorted, feeling as if everyone is expecting him to march recklessly into war. Eddard remembered the strife in the Tarly family before their thousands of men proceeded beyond the wall.
Perhaps we should be, my lord,
Cassius stated while looking down his nose at Eddard. It wasn't a tone of disapproval, but one of genuine encouragement. Eddard turned his attention back to the war table.
If we were to march, then Winterfell and Serwyn will man the last hearth. Carhold, the Dreadfort and the Hornwoods will reinforce the Watch on the eastern shoreline.
Eddard offered, but no advice was being presented, which encouraged him to continue.
Moat Cailin and Torrent Square will proceed here to Winterfell and prepare a reared assault, if that be needed.
That leaves just the Manderleys then.
Perhaps the most important, the White Fleet will sail and anchor on the far side of Skagos, then permit the incoming fleet inside our shores, and cut off any retreat.
Quite ambitious, my lord.
Lord Serwyn admitting in an approving tone.
Their ambition will bring them to our shores, and their arrogance will be their end.
Just as Eddard finished his sentence, Maester Ashmore split the double doors carrying ink and quill. He sat opposite them and prepared to take his lord's letter without even acknowledging them. After a few brief moments, he simply raised his quill and his eyes.
All ravens are fed and prepared for flight, my lord. What are your orders?
Eddard hesitated. He felt the weight of the north on his shoulders. Just as he dared to open his mouth, the old man interrupted to salvage his lord's pride. Ashmore set down his quill and folded his hands.
My lord, my predecessor advised your lord father as war set upon him shortly after he was hailed king in the north. Years before, Maester Lewin took Robb Stark's letters to his bannermen before setting off the War of the Five Kings. And lastly, your great-grandfather succeeded in a rebellion against a corrupt crown, and now I advise you.
Then what are my options?
Few, I dare say, my lord,
responded a stoic Ashmore as he again retrieved his quill.
What shall I tell your bannermen, my lord?
Lord Cassius crossed his arms in curiosity. Eddard drew a deep breath before fiercely responding.
Winter is coming.